Recency's webinar, Everything You Ought to Know About Your Donors, Building a Community of Support Around a Vision, yours. Today we're talking more about donor research. Thank you for joining us in this webinar. I want to tell you a little bit about Advocacy, who is actually bringing you this webinar today. First off, I'm Paul Martin. We help grow funding for Christian broadcasters, Christian schools, Bible colleges, missions agencies, nonprofit organizations that carry the gospel in general. Today, everything you ought to know about your donors. That's what we're discussing. I'd like to introduce you to our presenters today. First presenter, Randy Bronkema. Randy is a specialist in ministry, mission, and vision development. He has worked on countless capital campaign strategies and helped those come to completion. He also works on annual donor campaigns, and Randy has long university and academic experience, including media. We also have with us today Jerry Grimes. Jerry also has long experience leading Christian nonprofits, and he also includes university fundraising in his toolkit. Jerry is a donor communications specialist, and he works with nonprofit schools. He works with Christian formatted radio stations from market sizes like New York City all the way down to Fort Wayne, Indiana. We also have with us today our newest team member, Will Stevens. Will Stevens is a marketing executive from Wall Street. He keyed in, and you'll see why this is important in our conversation today. They looked at the potential investors and created messaging to reach those potential investors. In ministry, I think that's even more important, and you'll see why as we discuss it with Will today and with the whole team. Will also earned a Master of Divinity in Steward Leadership from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. We're glad to have all three presenters on our call today. And first, I'd like to ask Will a question. Donor intelligence sounds pretty complicated, so why is donor research a valuable tool for ministries?
Well, thanks, Paul. Yeah, donor intelligence research sounds like some kind of esoteric subject, but it's very practical and very beneficial for ministries. And it comes out of our philosophy of development, and one point of it, and that is that development and fundraising are a part of ministry. And the extension of that is that means that donors are actually part of our ministry. Ministry is not just those people doing the work and those people being served by your ministry. It's also the people who are standing behind the scenes lending the financial support, your donors. So since donors are an integral part of your ministry, it would help to know something about them. So donor intelligence research, very simply, is a process for getting to know who your donors are so that you can better connect them to your ministry. So how does it work? Well, it works through a series of surveys of your current donor database, also with interviews with a selection of donors, all with the purpose of gathering information to help your ministry in its marketing and its fundraising, and basically in its planning for everything it does. Donors are really key because that's where your support comes from. So after these interviews and surveys are done, the information is compiled, it's organized, and then it's reproduced in reports that have practical application for the work of ministry, and in particular for fundraising. So what are the types of things we need to know about our donors that we can get from donor intelligence research? Well, we get profiling information about who our donors are, demographic information, what they look like in terms of age and jobs, etc. Importantly, we get to know what motivates them to act as donors. Why do they support the ministries they support? How often do they give? Their behavior as donors is also important. And in the context of your ministry, what other ministries do they support? So all of these things help to get a good profile of who your donors are. What do they look like? I mean, are they young? Are they old? Are they primarily men, women? Are they retired? Are they professionals, business owners? Are there children in the household? Do they attend church? How often do they read the Bible? Do they volunteer their time? How much money do they make? What's their pattern of giving? How many ministries do they give to? All that information can be revealed in the donor intelligence study and really help you understand who your donors are, how they behave, and why they're connected to your organization. That's the second point. How are they connected to your ministry right now? Are they connected as volunteers? Are they users of your services? If you're a Christian college, are they alumni of your college, or are they parents of current students or alumni? What is their connection? If you're a Christian radio station or Christian radio ministry, are they listeners? And if they are, which format, if you have multiple formats, do they listen to? How often do they listen? Which segments of your programming resonates with them? All this information can help you connect with donors. And third, why do they value your ministry? What is the reason why ultimately donors are connected and give to your ministry? Now, for some people, it's the work you do. People have a heart for hearing the gospel presented on radio. Some people have a heart for missions. Some people have a heart for caring for the homeless or for orphans. So since giving is a condition of the heart, and the Bible talks about how a believer's heart is what generates true giving and involvement in the community, really helps to understand what moves the donors' hearts, the donors of your community. Specifically, it could be the people you help. Is it that some people are dedicated to the people of Africa or Native American peoples or orphans or children? So it might be the people you serve. And people might be connected to your ministry because of the values you represent. And that might be a little hard to articulate, but let me share a story about it. We were interviewing a donor for a Christian radio station, and this woman told a story. She said she was a faithful listener to this station, and she listened to the morning drive guy, a fellow that she'd never met, but she felt personally connected to him. And he took a mission trip, led a mission trip to India with people connected to the radio station. And when he came back, he began to tell stories about his travels through India and the work they were doing among the lost and the poor there. And this woman who was listening to his stories, she said to me, she said, as John told the stories about the mission trip to India, I could tell that his life was changed, that he had been deeply, deeply emotionally and spiritually affected by the trip. And that resonated with her. So the lesson there is that here's a Christian radio station, and what this donor and listener really respected and responded to from the station was the message of faith and living out their faith as a Christian ministry. That's what connected with her. So the practical application to that as a ministry is, are we as a ministry communicating the work we do in support of our faith? More than just the programming that we do on the radio station, but are we living out our gospel call and doing the work of Christ and communicating that through the work we do? So that's the general lesson of donor intelligence research, is the ability to get this profile of who your donors are, how they're currently connected to your ministry, what other ministries they're connected to, and what genuinely moves their heart to be faithful servants of Christ and supporters of your ministry. So the idea of donor intelligence is having a starting point for understanding who your donors are and how you can connect with them to draw them into your community of faith and your community of work, and get them to be part of your ministry community. And that's the real value of donor intelligence. Paul?
Very good. Thank you, Will. That is a tremendous overview of how the donor intelligence process works. Now, Jerry, we've got a lot of information, each one of the nonprofits here. There's a lot that we can learn about donors through the databases of those nonprofits. Now,
That's right, Paul. You want to begin to study the donors that you have on an ongoing, regular basis. And you do that through developing some segmentation so that you can track donor behavior over time and really understand how your donors relate to you, how they make decisions about giving, and how loyal they are to your cause, and how good a job you're doing communicating your vision. Because people respond to vision. And that's what God has us in ministry to do, is to cast a vision for the work that he wants us to do, and then engage people in it. And that is the biblical process of stewardship. So let's talk a little bit about segmentation. The very first and easiest type of segmentation to understand is by giving level. You certainly want to understand who the people are that are capable and have a higher capacity to give, and you want to try to develop a special relationship with them. Now, this isn't playing favorites. This isn't a system where you're going to treat some people better than others. We're going to honor, love, and respect all of our donors, but the ones who have a higher giving capacity could be people that God has brought to us to steward relationships with in a better way. Just as if we would look at those relationships as the people that are providing most of what our organization needs. The old 80-20 rule comes into play a lot of times, where 20% of what we need to keep a ministry going, rather 80% of what we need to keep a ministry going comes in from 20% of our donors. So it's really being intelligent and careful and good stewards of what God has provided when we sit down and take a look at our donors by their giving levels. And you want to try to establish what your organization's major donor giving level is. For a lot of the organizations that we work with, it's about $1,000 or $1,200 in any 12-month period. So if you have someone giving $100 a month or more, they're probably somebody you should consider to be a major donor, but also someone who gave you a single gift of $1,000 or more. In some cases, maybe organizations that are a little bit smaller might go all the way down to $500, but use the same technique. So you want to maybe take a look and determine who your major donors are, and that will help you develop a strategy for entry, mid, and major donors. You would then take a look at your database and say, okay, here's what we're going to do with the major donors. Here's what we're going to do with people in the middle, and some organizations, again, may not be small enough to have a true mid-level donor. And here's what we're going to do with entry-level donors. And this gives you a way of developing strategy for communication, for example, or for events, or just keeping in touch with those donors. The next way that you can segment is by giving history. So you take a look at how donors give, not only the amount that they're giving, but how they give. And that can be monthly donors versus single gift donors. You certainly want to have different communication strategies and different engagement strategies for people that are giving monthly over time. One of the things that I always surprise people with, and it surprises me that they're surprised by this, quite frankly, is that we want to try to leave alone donors who are giving monthly electronically on a credit card, debit card, or by EFT. It's not that we don't want to show them appreciation, we do. We just want to be very careful how we do it. But if we, for example, send mail to those donors on an ongoing regular basis after they've already indicated to us that they want to automate their giving and set it up electronically, they're probably telling us they don't want a lot of mail. So if we start mailing to them, we're likely to get dropped as an organization receiving a monthly gift. So be careful. That's just one example of how communication strategy is impacted by segmentation. The other area you want to look at is current donors versus lapsed donors. You certainly can't treat both of them the same way. Current donors need to be treated one way, and lapsed donors need to be communicated with yet another way. And believe it or not, you need to spend a lot more time thinking about the strategy for your lapsed donors and how to engage them. But you certainly don't want to neglect your current donors. It is so much easier to retain a donor and more cost effective to retain a current donor than it is to go after a lapsed one. But you definitely want to have a strategy for it. Lastly, I would say there's the whole area of data analysis. What you can do with your existing data once you put some of these segmentation pieces into place. After they run for a while and you have some history to study, you can do a recency frequency analysis. And this simply is trying to isolate in your database the people that are giving the most often and the people who have given the most recently. And this will be your highest return. So if you're looking for a way to reduce mailing costs, segment out those people who have given most recently and who are giving the most frequently. They're not monthly electronic donors, and that would be the prime target for mailing. That would be like level number 1. So you would want to maybe take a little extra time in developing the mail package for those folks, maybe using first-class postage, maybe using a different kind of envelope, spend a little bit more money on that because you know that that money is going to be returned to you. And then you also might want to take a look at donor retention. One of the biggest problems that ministries have, and I mentioned this earlier, it's so much more affordable and easier to retain donors than it is to lose them and then have to try to get them back. But there are a lot of ministries that don't worry at all about the donors that they're losing. So I suggest that you close the back door before you go after any new donors. And that simply is understanding in your database how well or how poorly you're doing in retaining donors. Figure out what it is that motivates your donors to stay with you, and then communicate those messages on an ongoing, effective basis so that they stay with you and you don't lose them, and you don't have to go after them and re-engage them as lapsed donors. And lastly, the average gift, the annual revenue per donor, and conversion rates, those are all areas where you can set goals. So if you want to try to increase your donor income, figure out what your average gift is right now. That would be every gift per occurrence. So if you are a Christian radio station and you do a share-a-thon or something like that, what's the average gift that comes in during that process? Or if you're a nonprofit like a camp or a school and you do mailings, what is the average gift that comes in through one of your mailings, say your Christmas appeal or something like that? That's the average gift that occurs. So if you want to set goals, then you simply say, okay, this year our average gift was $100. So next year we want it to be $110. How are we going to do that? And then you develop a strategy to sharpen your messaging, improve the mailing package, and take a look at the timing of everything, and try to increase the average gift and certainly the ask. The annual revenue per donor is a little different. That's if you take the average donor, how much did they give throughout the year? So they might have responded to your spring appeal and your fall appeal and your end of year appeal, and though the average of what they gave in 2 or 3 of those, or 2 out of 3 of those, or all 3, would be the average revenue that they gave for the year. So average revenue per donor. If it's $250 this year, we might want to push that to $270 next year. And how would we do that? How would we go about doing that? So that's a good way to look at that. And then conversion rate. If you know that you are mailing to prospects, if you maybe get names at an event or something like that, and you mail people a solicitation for the very first time trying to get them to be donors, what is the rate of conversion for that? How do you convert them over? Also, if you're focused on monthly electronic donors, you might have a plan to move people from giving infrequent gifts to giving regularly, monthly on a credit card, debit card, or EFT. That can also be a conversion rate. And these things are great things to study, understand, and then develop as goals, Paul, because if you don't have any goals, then you're probably not going to achieve anything. So that is exactly what we need to be focused on in fundraising. And all too often, we find that people kind of rock along doing the same thing from year to year.
Fantastic, Jerry. Thank you. Randy, I want to ask you a couple of questions here, because with your long experience, I want to talk a little bit more about research, but you've had some great experience with capital campaigns. How does this work with, how does research work with capital campaigns?
Well, thank you, Paul. Research is very important in understanding and moving forward with capital campaigns. And there are basically 6 questions that we want to ask our communities to make sure that we can be successful with our capital campaigns. And that first question is, does our community endorse our strategic plan and mission? It's very important that we have a long-term strategic plan or vision in place. So the capital campaign needs to work within that strategic plan and that vision. We also need to ask the community, are they excited about the capital project? Does this make sense to them? Are they willing to support it because they feel it is necessary for their community? And number 3, does the community believe you can raise the funds needed? These are basic questions, but they need to be asked. In many cases, Paul, we have asked people in feasibility studies, if they think they can make a certain amount of, raise a certain amount of dollars. And we have found that some people say, hey, we believe you can raise a lot more here, which is quite exciting to give that information back to a client to say, your community not only believes in you, but they believe you can raise even more money. So that makes it really fun. Does the community believe and respect leadership? Certainly we're giving to a capital campaign project, and certainly we know from research, as Jerry has stated, that people do give to vision, but we also give to people. We also give to relationships. And so we need to understand, does the community believe and respect the leadership of a particular ministry? Because we know a campaign can be successful if that occurs. And fifth, does the community understand and believe in your mission? If they don't believe in your mission, you're certainly not going to be successful with your capital campaign. So these are very important. That's a very important question to ask. And then lastly, will the community volunteer to make a campaign a success? A campaign needs many volunteers in which to be successful. And so we need to know that the community not only will embrace it, but will be willing to spend not only their treasure, but their time and energy as well in making sure that the campaign is going to be a success. Now, I know, and we know, that there are many campaigns out there that stall, and some have even been declared failures. But these campaigns can be revived if we simply go back and take a look at our communities and to say, are they supporting all 6 of these major questions that we're asking? In one case, there was a stalled campaign that we worked with many years ago. And we were able to go back and to take a look, and some of our major donors just were not connecting the project with their strategic plan. And once we bridged that gap, those major donors became excited about the campaign, and by God's grace, we were able to end it successfully. So good research can make a capital campaign move very smoothly and to a successful conclusion. Thanks, Paul.
Hey, very good, Randy. I appreciate you talking about how the research can really speed along capital campaigns, because we've seen a number of them stall out. And if you just take a little bit of time to go through a feasibility study before you launch into it, the likelihood of a successful campaign improves dramatically. In fact, Randy, I want you to stay on topic here, and let's talk a little bit about what can donor research do to help with major gift work. I mean,
well, there is plenty that we should be doing. The point here, Paul, is that information is our friend. Information is our friend, and we want to collect as much information about our major donors as we possibly can. We have found, especially in 20 plus years of doing major donor work, I have found that pets are very important sometimes to people, which makes it kind of fun and interesting. And you can even understand that you can give gifts according to these interests. People are inspired and people have different passions. And so we need to understand these types of things in our individual donors. So if you find someone, for instance, that does have a pet and very attached to the pet, you want that information in your database. So you can't remember everything about your major donors. So you use your data to help you keep informed and their interests and their likes and their dislikes and their family issues. So you can even have the computer remind you when somebody is going into surgery or has a medical condition, etc. All this information is so important in developing a major donor program. And so it's very important to develop and identify these major donor profiles and to collect as much data as possible. We need to assign individuals to an individual profile. So if there's just one of you working, of course you assign it to yourself. But if you have multiple people in your ministry that are working on major donors, please assign an individual to that donor So that donor can recognize your ministry through that individual, and then that one-on-one relationship can build and grow and become dynamic. Also identify opportunities to connect the individual major donor. There are many times that a donor is interested in things such as decorating something. Maybe you can engage that donor in terms of making your studios or your classrooms or your hallways with a better presentation because that individual is so excited to do that. Individuals like me love to play golf, so taking somebody out and playing golf with them and getting to know them and connecting with them with the opportunities that really begin to excite that major donor, and it's on their turf rather than yours. Also plan events around your major donors. Connect them with your concerts and your events and your plays, and invite them and give them desserts or beforehand or afterwards, but connect them, involve them and their families. There's a wonderful story one time of us meeting with a client, with a major donor, really experiencing some problems with their 20-year-old daughter, but finding out that their daughter loves music and enjoys it. But we had the opportunity to connect that daughter and that family to a concert, and the report back from the donor was so encouraging, and how that lady was blessed, that young lady was blessed and encouraged. And because of that encouragement, they sent a check of a little over $5,000 unsolicited, just to say thank you and just to say how much that meant in connecting their daughter to that concert and to that ministry. So plan events around your major donors. And always remember, information is king. Information is your friend. Start collecting information. You don't, let me just say this, that you really can't understand how much gold is in your database until you start picking it and growing at it and developing it, because there really is a lot of information and a lot of funds waiting for you in your database if you begin to start collecting and developing your information. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Randy. That's fantastic. Jerry, we've talked a lot about the research and how to use it, what's applicable about this. Tell us, when we're working with donors and trying to find the research, what do we want to find out?
Thanks, Paul. Randy's very right about information being gold. We really do need to take a look at all the information in our database, and sometimes we can get very granular and find donors who are interested in golf and find a way to connect them to our golf tournament, or donors who like to work in the visual arts and connect them to making a better presentation in our facilities. But sometimes we need to take a step back and just look at more basic things and understand the information that's in our data that might help us do a better job of communicating to people and engaging them in the cause that God has us doing. So one of the ways that you can do that is to study how donors find you. And this can be very, very simple. When you're collecting a donation for the first time, either on your response device in a direct mail package, that usually is the little card that you mail back in, or if it's online, you can simply have a little blank that allows people to tell you how they first heard about your organization. It's also a great way to open up a conversation with a brand new donor that you may be meeting with for the first time at an event, or maybe you've made an appointment with them. How did you find us? And try to understand what the trends are. Do people find out about your organization through an annual event that you do in the community? Do they find out because they're invited to tour your facility? Or do they find out from other friends? Maybe it's press releases and media articles that lead them to your organization. Once you understand what's motivating people to check you out and engage with you, well, of course, you can do more of that brings people to you, and hopefully get more donors. So it's a great way to find out what's working and how to keep doing more of it. Also, you can research what motivates donors to give. Ask consistently when you're doing those one-on-one appointments with major donors, or ask on an ongoing basis in queries that you make, research projects, surveys. Why are you giving to this particular organization? Maybe you want to suggest some reasons why and have them pick from a multiple choice option field, or you can just simply ask and let the answer be open-ended. But in either way, you're gathering the data that helps you understand how your donors are motivated, and that's so important. Then I would advise you to spend some time listening to your closest, most loyal donors' perceptions. We call these people champions, and it's amazing how many ministries are holding people at bay or maybe at arm's length who have given significantly over a number of years to the organization. They may write them a thank you note. They may even go see them now and then. But when was the last time you sat down with someone like that, reviewed operations, reviewed your mission, reviewed what's going on with the ministry, and really sought their input? It can be a little scary because we don't know what donors are going to say. But if you set up the meeting with, I'm just wanting to listen, I just want to hear some ideas. I can't promise I'm going to implement everything you talk about, but I just want to know what's on your mind about our work. I think most donors will understand that and give you some really good, honest feedback, and they have a perspective that other people just don't have. So listening to your closest, most loyal donors is key. And then I would consider maybe doing some focus groups with some of them. Have 4 or 5 or 6 come to lunch with you, sit down and talk about a particular issue. Talk about your communication strategy, your events, things that your organization does. Ask them what they think about things, if there's anything that they would add or delete from your schedule. You'd be surprised the honest feedback you can get. And then you want to use focus groups like this to compare it with quantitative data. So if you think back to the beginning of our time together today, Will outlined a strategy for maybe doing a formal research project with your donors. If you do something like that, it's a good idea to also then do some focus groups to compare and contrast the quantitative data with the qualitative data that you might be gathering that way.
Thank you, Jerry. That has a lot to do with the making the impact that we want to make with our donor communications, with research, donor intelligence, being able to find out more about our donors. I want to tell you, next week we do have another webinar in our series. Today was everything you ought to know about your donors, but next week will be the 5 keys to fundraising success and your ministry's long-term growth. Please join us next Thursday for that. Just want you to grab the email or the phone number of each of our consultants on the left there, along with our good friend Jeff Crabtree, our client advocate here at Advocacy. Please feel free to reach out if you'd like more information about anything we discussed. And in the meantime, you also might want to take a look at the blogs that are available at advocacy.com.